Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome back on Conventus Orbis. This is your host, Harmonia Link. Today, April 21st, 2026, marks the 2779th anniversary of Rome's founding, according to the widely accepted date that places it on the 21st of April of 753 BC, as attested, for example, in Plutarch's Life of Romulus. To celebrate this event, I have decided to prepare this video, which will attempt to answer two questions relating to the topic of Rome's first days. Where was the location upon which Rome was founded? Is the traditional date known to the wider public correct? The inspiration for this video came to me when I was studying Roman history during my first year of university and had stumbled upon the name of Italian archaeologist Andrea Carandini, who has on-field experience regarding excavations in the city of Rome and is the author of this video's main source, La Fondazione di Roma raccontata da Andrea Carandini, or in English, The Founding of Rome narrated by Andrea Carandini. The video will be divided in two main segments, each regarding one of the two cardinal questions of this video. The first will focus on the geography of the area around where and in which Rome was founded. The second segment will focus on the chronography of Rome's founding, listing off alternative dates to the most beloved April 21st, 753 BC, and Carandini's personal opinion on when the city can be said to have been founded. Before starting, I would like to inform all my viewers that, from now on, I will try my best to leave in each of my videos descriptions various links for the sources I have used and will use to make my videos, alongside a copy of the script itself with annotated parts to indicate what part of the script are my personal opinion, what is my re-elaboration of the information I have found in my sources, and what is a direct quote from the sources themselves. Having laid down these premises, let us delve right into today's topic. To begin, I believe it would be beneficial to go on a brief overview of the geographical landscape, both physical and anthropological, in which Rome would be founded in. This area was known as Latium, and at the time of Rome's founding, its territorial extension coastwise went from what used to be the city of Ostia, nowadays Ostia Antica, to the promontory known as Circeum. Latium bordered with Etruria in the northwest, their natural border being the Tiber River, and with Sabina in the northeast, following a border roughly going from what once was the city of Nomentum to the Tiber. The land was inhabited by folks of different origin, amongst whom Pliny the Elder groups 30 distinct communities under the denomination of Alban people, their commonality being the socio-political connection to the city of Alba Longa, which acted as head of this ancient league and hosted the annual Feriae Latinae, the Latin festival, where all the Alban people gathered to conjointly sacrifice an ox to Jupiter Latiaris, the Jupiter of Latium, whilst also bringing along goods that would be eaten communally at the sacrificial feast, tradition that would continue well after the founding of Rome, and to which the Romans themselves would partake in. The reason why the Romans were allowed to join this festival is most likely due to the city's early population being mainly comprised of three of these Alban people, whose home were the seven hills by the Tiber, upon which the eternal city would eventually come to be. These were the Latinienses, the Velienses, and the Querquelutani. An important question to ask now is, how come that out of all places a city was founded upon such an unusual and hardly unifiable location? After all, cities are not usually founded in random locations. There is always at least a motive that drives one or more communities to undertake the endeavor of urbanization. So, what were the reasons for Rome to be founded on this specific site and not somewhere else? A very straightforward answer can be found in its strategic location for the commerce of salt, a vital resource in a world where the main methods of food conservation were salting, desiccation, and conservation in basements. The area of settlement of the three Alban people was on the hills right by a segment of the Tiber River that presented a ford and thus allowed for a safe enough passage to those merchants who brought the salt extracted in Latium at the mouth of the Tiber into Etruria or Sabina. Tied to the commercial explanation, one can also find a socio-cultural motive for the aggregation and subsequent urbanization in this location. While salt produced southwest was traded, the locals had their own salt reserves, destined for local use and stocked in a storage under the divine protection of Hercules, to whom an altar was dedicated right by the salt storage, a place of religious importance that should not be overlooked as a factor in the urbanization process that would eventually take place. Last but not least, urban settlements tend to emerge wherever populations are usually already settled with a certain degree of regularity, undergoing the process known as syncretism. This would imply the existence of one or more pre-urban settlements that would be the population basis and human material from which the city would socio-politically emerge. Existence confirmed by the excavations of Carandini. He calls this human conglomerate with the same name used by Varro to refer to the site of Rome before the founding of the city, that is, Septimontium, translatable with the commonly used English locution seven hills, although the original word would have had a connotation more akin to seven mountains, in Latin, montes. The Septimontium was a proto-urban settlement that began its development upon the highlands of the Palatine, Kermalus and Velia, followed soon after by the Caelius and the closest three peaks of the Esquiline, being the Fagutal, the Oppius and the Cispius. These were the seven original montes. However, the Esquiline peaks would have eventually just been considered part of one single mons, while the two nearby hills known as Viminal and Quirinal were eventually integrated in the newly formed settlement, although they were known as colles rather than montes, bringing the total number of hills back to seven. The appearance of this irregular yet unitary settlement would have appeared in Carandini's words as a sort of garden city possessing multiple centers that would have presented a water well and an agglomerate of no more than 4 huts surrounded by gardens, orchards and animal enclosures. These would have gone from the peaks of the various highlands down to the valleys, creating an irregular but surely continuous, commonly inhabited area from hill to hill. This garden city settlement was divided in 27 districts called curie, and each curia was based upon groups of people related, to various degrees, with each other. The totality of the inhabitants of the 27 curiae were known as Quirites, where a tutelar deity was the local god named Quirinus, and they all shared common customs and rites for at least a century before the city was founded. The area they inhabited was spread across for about 205 hectares, 35 less than the extension of Rome at the time of its founding. This indicates that rather than being an endeavor dictated by the will of a single man, the mythical Romulus, to create something from scratch, the founding of Rome was a socio-political rebranding of a pre-existing settlement that united all of the Curiae under the authority of one king, Romulus, one city, Rome, and one common legislative body, the Senate. Having covered the geographical side of the founding of Rome, it is time to focus on the chronographical side. When was Rome founded? Most of the ancient sources tend to agree on a time span that goes from 813 BC to 728 BC, with a tendency to gravitate around the middle part of the 8th century. Dionysius of Halicarnassus, in his Roman Antiquities, lists several of the dates proposed by historians prior to him. Timaeus Tauromenitanus proposed 813 BC, Cato the Elder proposed 751 BC, Polybius proposed 750 BC, Quintus Fabius Pictor proposed 747 BC, Lucius Quinctius Alimentus proposed 728 BC. Dionysius himself, after an elaborate chronological calculation, proposed that the first year of reign of Romulus, that being also the first year of existence of Rome, began in 751 BC. To conclude with this recounting of dates given us by the ancients, going back to what was said at the beginning of the video, there is Plutarch, who reports the date of 753 BC, commonly known and accepted by the Romans as the canonical year during his lifetime, that being during the second half of the 1st century AD and the beginning of the 2nd century AD. While these are not the only dates proposed, they suffice to see a common idea of the general temporal placement of the founding of the city. Carandini himself seems quite confident in giving credit to the ancient sources. He writes that the earliest material accounts of the city of Rome, especially walls, the house of the king, and the area used for public assemblies, seem to all fall into the time span going from about 775 BC to about 750 BC. He goes then into detail regarding the house of the king, identified in the oldest hut on the Palatine, dated to the 9th century BC. This hut, around the mid-8th century, was replaced with two new smaller huts built on the perimeter of the previous ones, identified with Carandini as the Casa Romuli, the House of Romulus, and a place of worship for the deities Mars and Ops. One last indication towards the dating proposed by Carandini is more of a gruesome one, so to anyone watching that is susceptible to the topic of human sacrifices, take this as a trigger warning and skip at the timestamp shown on the screen. During an excavation in the area of Porta Mogonia, one of the gates attributed to the walls built by Romulus, a tomb was uncovered. This tomb contained the remains of a young girl who was given a sacrifice in exchange for the divine benevolence of the gods towards the enclosure of the walls and the establishment of the gate. Alongside her remains was found a funeral trousseau which was dated in the same time span as the previous findings, between 775 BC and 750 BC. Regarding the year of founding, or rather the possible years, or at least a probable time frame, this will suffice. The next matter that requires attention is the day of founding, and the understanding of why April 21st became so commonly accepted. Once more, Plutarch's Life of Romulus must be taken in consideration, as in it he gives us an insight of what the 21st of April meant for the people that would eventually become the first Romans. He writes that before the Romans started celebrating that day as the birthday of their city, they celebrated a pastoral festivity known as Parilia. This festivity seems to have been a characteristic of the community atop the Palatine, who celebrated in honor of an ancient deity known as Pales. The rites going as follows. A horse was mutilated and then sacrificed. Its blood burnt and the fumes thus produced spread all around. Then followed the lambs alongside beanstalks, both burnt, their ashes scattered. Meanwhile, laurel branches were used to sprinkle water. Bread buns made of millet and milk were offered to Pales, and the men of the community leaped through 3 lines of fires. All of this elaborate sequence of rituals held the function of purification for both people and their herds, especially the latter, as this would be the season in which goats give birth, hence the name Parilia, etymologically tied to parere, Latin for to give birth. Carandini goes as far as to call this the Shepherd's New Year celebration, and proposes that the reason why on this day the city was founded is to be tied to the desire of having the founding day be the same as the most ancient New Year these communities shared. With this said, I think it is time to wrap everything up and come to my own personal conclusions. For the matter of the location, I feel like there is little room to speculation and that the evidence brought by the archaeological excavations and the confirmation in the sources are enough to state that Rome first started in what was defined as the Septimontium. Regarding the matter of the dating, to me it appears sound and plausible what Carandini proposes, being that the legend we all know and love has no reason to be disregarded as a historical possibility, although I have to admit I find it difficult to state with certainty that a specific date is the correct one, as we have seen there were several proposed dates falling in the same time frame of the archaeological dating. As Dionysius of Halicarnassus, I believe the date of 813 BC to be fundamentally flawed, Not only it is out of the time frame that was established, it is also clear that Timaeus proposed it solely as propaganda to nobilitate Rome as an ancient polity that was born the same year of Carthage. After all, he lived through a time in which the First Punic War was just beginning, and he, a Sicyliot Greek, surely did not have the Punics to heart. I'm also not too convinced by the dating of 728 BC given by Quintus Alimentus. From what I could tell, especially in my university course on the history of Rome, this date rose a bit in popularity as a candidate, but it is out of the archaeological time frame by almost a quarter of a century, but it surely is more likely as a dating than Timaeus' 813 BC. Regarding the traditional date of 753 BC given to us by Plutarch, I hold it as dubious at best. While it does fit into the time frame, it is recounted by someone who lived centuries after the other sources we have seen. Not only that, he also just gives us an account of a calculation done on behalf of Varro, who lived in the 1st century BC, meaning this is a 1st century from scratch dating based no less on astrological phenomena rather than previous sources. Out of all of the dates I have shown in this video, we are left with Quintus Fabius Pictor's 747 BC, Polybius's 750 BC, and Cato the Elder's and Dionysius of Halicarnassus's 751 BC. Out of these three, Pictor's is the one I would put aside as less likely, for the reason that it is just barely out of the archaeological time frame, although by very little that I wonder if it really matters in this case, and because the other two dates are separated by a mere year of difference. Dionysius states that Polybius doesn't really bring much to support his claim, which makes me wonder if Polybius might have just misremembered by 1 year, or if the slightly convoluted Olympic dating system might be at play here, which would give slightly more credit to the 751 BC dating that both Dionysius and Cato came to conclude on their own. I won't lie on the fact that I also think that Cato the Elder's rigor in respecting the Mos Maiorum and the Roman tradition in general makes me think that he has done his diligent work in recounting as truthful of a story as possible, but as I already said, I find it difficult to confirm a specific date as the correct one. For what regards the day, I have little issue in believing April 21st as being truthful, seeing the cultural relevance it had on the people of the Septimontium, specifically the Palatine. But I also should note that the calendar has not remained the same since Romulus, and, as I am not really informed on how the changes in calendar might have affected the actual day of founding, I have no concrete information to confirm nor deny my belief. Now, I pose the question to you. Do you have a specific year and day you would hold as truthful for the founding of Rome? Is there any other that didn't make it into the video that you would like to add onto the list? If so, feel free to leave a comment down below with your ideas and views. I hope that this video made you learn something new, or at least entertained you. If that is the case, I would humbly ask you if you could do the ritualistic actions that so much appease the YouTube algorithm. The usual like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video with someone that might like the video's topic. In the description you will find links to Carandini's book, the script with the annotations, a list of the sources that were consulted, and the background music used in the video. Huge thanks and a shout out to the channel's donator Benjamin. This was Harmonia Link, and I hope to see you in the next one.